This man got back at cheating ex by showing up at her wedding to new man. A popular saying about revenge says, "Revenge is a dish best served cold." And as this story shows, some people take these words to the extreme. There are tons of horror revenge stories with future brides and grooms planning on indescribable vengeance on their spouses. But the ones that hurt the most, which seem to be pretty trendy, happen when the bride or groom waits until the day of the wedding to embarrass their spouses in front of all their family and friends. This guy did worse. He waited for his ex-girlfriend's wedding to get back at her. For couples who spend long periods apart, it might be hard to keep things afloat. Dino, the oil rig worker, and his girlfriend had to endure the challenging experience of having some sort of long-distance relationship. It's a fact that oil rig workers can earn pretty well due to their long periods out in the sea, with everything paid for while working really hard. Unfortunately, though, they can't win it all. Working in those conditions and in that particular industry means spending long periods away from home. So when distance started taking a toll on Dino and his girlfriend's relationship, things started heading south for good. At a certain point in their relationship, Dino began wondering about his girlfriend's sudden distance towards him. His suspicions of a possible cheating situation increased every single day. Although he wanted to ask her what happened, it was hard to do while he was miles away from home, out at sea with no fixed return date. As much as he wanted to return home and confront his girlfriend, he had a contract and a commitment to the company he worked in and to his co-workers. Dino was a skilled guy, and though the job is quite demanding, it doesn't particularly require a university degree or any in-depth education. Still, while some people might assume that the people who work in these companies aren't that bright, that's not so true. Many oil rig workers are really smart people, and Dino ends up proving it to everyone with the stunt he pulled on his ex-girlfriend's wedding 2 years after the breakup. But to get there, we need to understand the whole picture and learn his story from the start. When asked about Dino's character, his co-workers described him as a nice guy, quiet, minding his own business, and avoiding hardcore parties. Different from fellow oil rig workers, he mostly enjoyed a calm life. Dino was also very calculated with the way he spent his money and made sure to make smart decisions since he planned to build a future with his girlfriend at the same time. He was modest and preferred to keep his success for himself, and mostly wanted to have a good woman beside him to share his success and money. Unfortunately, though, he wasn't so lucky in that territory. Despite the fact that he could have any woman he wanted, he had decided to wait for the right one. He saw his fellow oil rig workers dating a different girl every other month, but he came to the conclusion that life wasn't for him. He was ready to settle down. He was patient, kind, and decisive, and somewhere deep inside he knew that when the right moment came, he would grab it and never let it go. Eventually, the moment came, and no one could believe Dino when he showed off his new woman. The woman was stunning, according to Dino's work friends, and everywhere she went, jaws were dropped. Sadly, though, she was stunning on the outside. It didn't seem like she enjoyed the same traits on the inside. The woman, whose real name wasn't revealed for her protection, so some media sources have fondly called her Andrea, became known as the pretty lady with the awful personality. She made a perfect contrast for Dino, as he wasn't the best-looking man, but had a huge heart and a strong character. While his friends understood that a woman like that would put a spell on any man, no one had seen it coming for a man as smart and calculative as Dino. For everyone who witnessed the relationship, something about it was really off. Dino's friends tried to be happy for him, but they decided to keep an eye out for him. Dino had fallen completely in love with Andrea, but from the beginning, he could notice some warning signs. During a conversation with some friends, he once shared that even though her beauty was out of this world, she had some self-centered and attention-grabbing traits. While he admitted that out loud for everyone to hear, he still failed to see the signs were becoming increasingly suspicious. Years later, in retrospect, he claimed that Andrea not only knew that she was gorgeous, she also knew how to use it to her advantage. In fact, she made sure she only used it to her advantage. She had become very skilled at manipulating people with the intent of getting what she wanted at any cost. Everything around her screamed that she was a predator, but Dino had become blind to her spells and was ready to give in to anything she wanted. Soon enough, Andrea was moving in with Dino. His family and friends were now becoming very concerned with the fast pace that the relationship had taken. For Dino, though, things were going perfectly. He was in love. They were a happy couple. The natural form of progression in the relationship would be to move in together. But Andrea lived in the condo by herself for most of the year, while Dino was away working hard at the oil rig. After some red lights and weird behaviors, Dino's suspicion began. One day, during a routine check to his bank account, something didn't quite add up. He had made the decision of leaving his credit card with Andrea in case she needed it. His bank statements were a bit odd in relation to what he knew he had spent that month. He started seeing high grocery purchases in his statement that simply didn't make sense. It started with $300 in groceries, and just a number of days later, other $200 were gone, and so on. When his friends recall the incident, they claim that Andrea was either spending a whole ton of money in groceries or she was getting cashbacks from the local store for personal use. It was obvious to most that the latter option made more sense. While it was hard to admit, Dino had started suspecting that his girlfriend wasn't with him for love. She was just another gold digger. He was working hard every single day in harsh conditions in order to build a life together, while all his girlfriend did was spend his money and hard work with banal things. One of the first things that crossed through Dino's mind was that Andrea was most probably being unfaithful. The money was suspicious, but her distance and sudden strange behavior led all signs to an affair. It was a perfect situation for her. Dino was away, she had a house, his credit card, and everything she needed to live a luxurious life without him, while having a relationship with another man. When his suspicions started eating him alive and he could no longer go another day without finding out what was really happening, he made a decision. He decided to buy a plane ticket and surprise his girlfriend a couple of days before Andrea expected him to get home. Sadly, he was about to find out that his instincts had not betrayed him and that he had been right all along. Because of how calculative he was, when he got to his condo, he asked the security guard to go upstairs with him just in case he needed a witness. He was pretty sure he was about to find out something that would change the whole course of his relationship. When he got home, he caught Andrea with another man. She was completely shocked, while the random man was absolutely confused with what was happening. But Dino is a cool guy, so he kept himself together and chose not to make a scene, at least not at that specific moment. He told the man to go home, while keeping his temper and not moving his sight from Andrea. He then decided to tell her to get out of the house as well, since he no longer wanted to look at her. Dino was such a nice guy that before kicking her out, he gave Andrea the keys to a hotel room in town, paid for a taxi, and told her he never wanted to see her again. Andrea lost it and started screaming, crying, and cursing at him. At this point, Dino finally lost his cool and ordered the security guard to call the police right away. The police were quick to arrive and removed Andrea from the apartment with absolutely no ceremonies. Thankfully for Dino, she wasn't on the lease and they weren't married, so it was fairly easy to kick her out. Unfortunately though, Andrea was a vindictive woman, so things weren't over for her. She was alone, had no money, and all of her belongings had been locked in storage. She desperately called Dino, but he never answered the phone. When she could no longer take the fact that she was being ignored, she went back to the building. But Dino was one step ahead. He knew that she would come by at some point. When she got there, she realized that none of her things were in the apartment through the security guard. Dino had decided to keep the fact that he had dumped it in a storage far away. Dino had arranged with the doorman for him to hand her the keys to the storage and give her directions. Afterward, he informed her that she was no longer allowed in the condo and wasn't welcome. Andrea felt humiliated and was fuming with anger. That's when she decided to hit back at Dino in a way that would only make things much worse. Andrea had gotten to know Dino pretty well, including what he loved the most. His condo was not his only precious achievement in life. His car was too. Dino was obsessed with his brand new Chevy Monte Carlo. So Andrea decided to wait for Dino to leave again to the oil rig. She went back to his condo at night and completely destroyed his car. When Dino got back, he couldn't believe his eyes. His 4 car tires were flat, and red paint had been poured all over the previously white car. When he saw it, he knew right away that the person responsible for it was Andrea. Even though Dino was furious, he decided to cool down and make a plan. He just knew that he needed to wait for the perfect time to strike back so that he could put all matters to sleep once and for all. He never forgave her for what she did, but decided to move on with his life. He had a great job after all, earning money with loyal friends, until one day he got the news that Andrea was getting married. He knew right away that the time had come. Dino's longtime friend Nancy heard the news and told him right away. She knew about everything that Andrea had done to him and thought he should know. She did so even though her sister was very good friends with Andrea. As we learn, the story develops. Nancy ends up becoming an essential person in the plot that Dino was planning. He was ready to strike back at Andrea in what she thought would be the most amazing day of her life. Little did she know how wrong she was. The whole thing started with a handwritten letter from Dino to Andrea. A month before her wedding day, she got an anonymous letter. Dino had decided not to disclaim that the letter was his. When she opened the envelope, she saw 3 things: a bottle of ketchup, a picture of a Monte Carlo, and a wedding dress. Additionally, Andrea found a small piece of paper with the words "red on white." She knew right away who had sent her the envelope. No one had ever forgotten about the red paint car ordeal. Through the cryptic message, he basically told her that he was coming to get her. Andrea was worried. She didn't want anything to come between her special day to her future husband. But Nancy had overheard the name of the store where Andrea had bought her white dress from and shared the information with Dino. Dino then went to the store, paid a guy $100 to call Andrea and tell her to run to the store so she could choose her red lace trim. Andrea arrived just a couple of minutes later. The man then told her that her fiancé had asked him to call her, but she knew that what was really happening was a malevolent plot from Dino. As if it wasn't enough, just a couple of days after, Andrea received more than 30 red lipsticks bought by prepaid credit cards. He kept tormenting her with little pranks, always involving something red, until the day of her wedding. She was so scared that she asked her father to call Dino, demanding that he back off and left his daughter alone. Andrea was a wreck. On her wedding day, she asked that all red flowers were thrown away. She couldn't be any close to guests holding a red drink, and the list went on. She had turned into a full-fledged bridezilla, and Dino had the pleasure of hearing everything firsthand from his friend Nancy. She ended up exposing herself completely by herself, showing guests and her future husband how paranoid she was. In the end, her real character was exposed for everyone to see, and Dino had finally gotten his revenge.